Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
I'm your host, Ana Melikian, and my mission is to support individuals and organizations to increase their impact while avoiding burnout. If you want to work smarter, not harder, I can help you. If you want to go from burnout to full engagement, let's talk. Reach me at Ana, A-N-A, at mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com, it's .zone. You can also access all the episode notes, links, and other amazing resources at mindset.zone. Today, I want to explore one of my favorite quotes of all times. And this quote is, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response, and in our response lies our growth and our freedom." I use this quote for a long time in my talks. So much that I think was back in 2014, so almost 10 years ago, I decided to check if I had it referred to, in other words, to know exactly from which book this quote was coming from. And at the time, like so many other people out there in the internet, I was attributing this quote to Viktor Frankl, somebody that I admire very much. And if you are a follower of this podcast from the beginning, you know that I did several episodes about Viktor Frankl and how much I appreciate and I'm inspired by his work in logotherapy and the book Man's Search for Meaning. And I even had the privilege to interview his grandson, Alex Vassalli, in the podcast. I will make sure that I put all the links in the show notes. So I really wanted that this quote was from him. But when I contacted the archives in Vienna of Viktor Frankl work, they told me, no, we don't know any work where this is. In their words, I still have the email. I suspect that this is a hearsay quote. So that was like a shock for me initially. And I decided, so if it's not Viktor Frankl, who is the person that says this? And the other name usually associated with this quote was Stephen R Covey from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I thought, okay, I start to research more, and I learned that there is not really a concrete origin for this quote. And there is a great article. The best reference for this is an article from the quoteinvestigator.com. It's an online resource that, like the name says, they specialize in tracking quotations and the origins and the misattributions that are out there. And they have an in-depth article about between stimulus and response quote. And they explain that, without any doubt, Stephen R. Covey is the one that popularized this quote. He had several versions of it. And the reason I think why so many people misattribute this to Frankl is because in the very famous and well-known book of Stephen R. Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he speaks a lot about Viktor Frankl work, and he uses a version of this quote to encapsulate some of the essence of it. And again, I will put the article from the quote investigator that goes in detail here, but just I'm going to read a little passage from the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where Stephen R. Covey speaks about Viktor Frankl. So starting the quote now from that book. They could control his entire environment. They could do what they wanted with his body. But Viktor Frankl himself was a self-aware being who could look as an observer at his very involvement. His basic identity was intact. He could decide within himself how all of this was going to affect him. Between what happened to him, or the stimulus, and his response to it, was his freedom or power to choose that response. So this is a theme in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the power that we have to choose our response. The way that Stephen R. Covey speaks about this, and the inspiration that so many others, including myself, have from Viktor Frankl work that became associated with it. But again, going back to the quoteinvestigator.com, they really dig into this, and they found that in the work of Covey, he says that he read this quote similar to this in a book that he found while he was doing some research, and what he remembers was very impactful because encapsulates really an important point that so much of Covey work is based on. And there is another book, First Things First, that Covey co-authored in, I think, 1994, where he wrote, years ago, as I was wandering between a stack of books at the university library, I chanced to open a book in which I encounter one of the most powerful, significant ideas I have ever come across. The essence of it was this: between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That idea hit me with an incredible force. In the following days, I reflect on it again and again. And this is really why this is important. Yes, at one level, we all are trying to evolve and grow, and we are in the shoulder of giants, and it's important to do the right attributions of work to other people that came before us. And I love the work as the quote investigator to help us on that. But at the more important level, why I decide to do this episode is because I think this quote can really be transformational. And I think is that why Steve R. Covey use it so much, and why I use it so much also in my talks, because in a short way, it brings together something that is fundamental for our personal growth. Is that power of choosing our response. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is the power to choose our response. And this is something that we can track back even if we look to the existentialism in philosophy and in psychotherapy, and again, the same quote investigator, they speak about this and they refer the work that possibly is in the origin of this quote of the psychologist called Rollo May. Is this essence that if we manage to see that gap between the thing that can trigger us, and if we believe and if we train ourselves to see the space, we have the opportunity to choose our response to that stimulus. And this is really powerful and important. And in my own work, what is my little 2 cents to this is that bring to our awareness that yes, I absolutely believe this. And yet, when circumstances are tough, it's so difficult to see this space between a stimulus and our responses. And in my modest opinion, the only way that we can make this really part of our way of being is by developing our mental fitness muscles that allow us to press the pause button, that allow us to see that space, that allow us to choose our response. We really have to be intentional on this. And that is one of the core reasons why I developed what I now call my PIE method, P-I-E method, that I already spoke in several episodes of this podcast, because we need these simple tools, reminders to help us to cultivate our personal development. And the first element of the PIE method is the P for pause. And is the idea that in order to be able to press the pause button in these milliseconds, we really have to be mentally fit. I call this the micro pauses because they are so short, and that sometimes in the beginning we are aware after we react. Our response is a reaction, and we can start to rewire our brain to think, okay, if next time this happens, what I would like to have done instead. So we have to be very gentle with ourselves. But it's this concept of pausing. I speak that there are at least 3 types of pauses. There is what I call the macro pauses. That is going to a retreat, reading a book, working with a coach or a therapist. We are really taking time to pause and do the work. And it's really important to have this macro time to do that, to reset. And at the same time, I know that if we do that incredible work, but then we don't keep it going in the day-to-day, we are not fully leverage all the things that we start to discover. And that is where I speak about another type of pause that I call the scheduled pauses. That is scheduled moments that we can create in our day-to-day that allow us the space to exercise our mental fitness, to become more aware of things, and we can do different things from journaling to meditation to a gratitude exercise and a breathing exercise, anything that allow us to just be and give us a container to train our mental fitness, because we cannot expect that, and that is why I love the term mental fitness. If we are not, let's think about physically fit. If we are not physically fit, and then we have to climb 4 flights of stairs to the 4th floor of a building, we arrive to the 4th floor with no breath left. And we don't have capacity, physical capacity to do anything. Because if we are not physically fit, we have the circumstance of climbing 4 flights of stairs and the body needs to recover. And we can see the same analogy with our mental fitness. If we are not mentally fit and something happens in our lives, circumstances that are difficult, we don't have the buffer, the resilience, the capacity to exercise all the powers that we have. And the power of choosing our response is one of it. We just have to give us the grace to recover our breath, recover ourselves, and knowing that we did the best given the circumstances and our fitness, mental or physical. So the key is to keep growing and becoming more resilient and become more mentally fit. And then we will be ready in a new challenge that life always throws us, to be able to press the pause button in the micro pauses, in that microseconds when we are triggered with a stimulus, and then we have the capacity to create the space that we need to choose our response. And there lies our growth and our freedom. That is the reason why I'm spending so long on this, because it's so important. It's the P of the Pi method, is the essence of the P that allow us to go from a reaction mode to a creation or proactive mode of being, that then by creating this container, these pauses, allow us to go to the other elements of the pie, that is the I for increasing the self-awareness of our thoughts, our feelings, and behaviors and actions that we have and we can choose from. And then the E of the pie method, that the E for embracing the experimentation mindset, because we are going to try many different things, many different pauses, for instance, many types of scheduling pauses, and some days they are going to work, other days they are not going to work. Some methods are going to work better than others, and like in an experiment, yes, we can have expectations of something going to happen, but the reality that we learn most when things don't go exactly as planned, and we have to learn from it. So it's a great way of reframing failure, because in reality, everything is information that we can learn from. And if we apply this simple PI method, principles of learning how to press the pause, increasing our self-awareness, and embracing the experimentation mindset, you really can take advantage of much more of the amazing resources out there in our journey of self-development, and be able to see the space between the stimulus and response that allow us to exercise the power of choosing our response and keep growing in this journey. So I hope that this inspires you to keep in this journey. And as always, I would love to hear from you. You can reach me at my email, anna@mindset.zone.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
Thank you for listening, and remember to follow this podcast. And if you are listening in Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. That really helps us spread the word about the Mindset Zone. Also visit mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com is .zone. There you can find amazing resources and more information about my speaking and how I support purpose-driven individuals and organizations increase their impact while preventing burnout. As always, I'm so grateful you are here. Expand what's possible for you, for the ones around you, for the world.